Globale problemer trenger globale løsninger, så jeg skal bytte til engelsk. I'm a bit better in English, so I hope that's fine for everyone. The title of my presentation is Transforming Product Design with Lifecycle Thinking, and I'll dive into what this exactly means and how we are trying to introduce this new way of working into the product design process and why. To start with, this is just a very, very important perspective in my opinion, is that in order to solve the climate crisis, we actually need to create a new economy. And that's what's super exciting and fascinating about this, is that we are actually doing this. Every one of you are part of this transition, and we're all contributing to it. And it's quite simple to classify this economy, this new emerging economy, into three main categories. There are what you call low-carbon products, or the solutions. These are like new materials, completely new ways of doing things in a low-carbon way. There are things that what we call transformers, the companies and products who are figuring out how they can transform their kind of dirty business models and dirty products into something much better. And then there are the laggards, the third category. And we think that low-carbon products will thrive in this future and this transition. And the transformers may survive if they execute this transformation well. And then you have the third category, the laggards, and I think they're just going to die. And that's just the nature of this innovation cycle. And what does it mean that something is low carbon or low impact? Well, you need to think about it in a very holistic way across the whole life cycle of the product, how a product is created, what kind of materials it's using, what kind of manufacturing processes it's made of, but also up to the end of life of the product, like what happens to it after. If you're making a product that gets burnt in a power plant, then maybe that's not that good for the environment. So we need to consider the whole life cycle. And this is very, very important because right now, there's a lot of talk about greenwashing, and what greenwashing is precisely is actually picking one part of the life cycle and talking about that. Like, look at our packaging. This is recycled and amazing, while the product in itself is really bad. So we need to look at this whole perspective. So in the example of a well-known Apple Watch, this is something like probably most of the impact is in the materials and the material choices and the manufacturing process of the product itself. Transport of some of these parts to an assembly plant. There is a production process where this is being assembled into a finished product. And the packaging, that's also part of it. And also how much energy and what type of energy this product is using in its use stage. And of course, what happens to it at the end of the life. So we need to think about this. We need to trace it in our head, in our design process, to map it out in its entirety. And of course, there's a bunch of things we can do once we map this out, once we understand all of these different parts and these different materials and where they're coming from and what is their impact. There's a lot of things we can do. We can replace the carbon-intensive materials. This is something that's happening, and of course, you can see, like in Norway, we have Hydro, which is an amazing aluminium company, much, much better in terms of its carbon footprint than the competitors or the world average. Because of the renewable energy and the high recycled content. If you're replacing your materials with hydro aluminium, you're going to get a lower footprint. Also, electrifying processes. There's a lot of industrial heat that's currently provided by gas or coal or other type of carbon-intensive input. Electrifying them, electrifying transport. Again, if you have a full life cycle perspective, then you know exactly where those hotspots are that you need to work with. Switch to renewable energy, obviously, everywhere, across the whole life cycle, deep in the supply chain. It's easy to say, a very, very difficult problem. It means that you might have to work with your suppliers and understand how to actually switch to renewable energy in a different country. Of course, reducing energy consumption is good for everyone because it's also reducing costs. And one of the most important levers is to implement a circular business model. So there's a lot of these things, very generic, and everyone knows this, and it's kind of easy to understand. Why? Well, there's a very pure business reality here. The world is changing, so the perception of our perception in terms of consumers and also like business-to-business decision makers is that we want to, like many people consider this when they're making a decision. So the products now, there is an increasing number of statistics on this and studies that show that these products that we consider low carbon are growing faster than alternatives. So if you compare a green product with something that's a regular product in its category, then it grows faster. So there is a business argument, and there is also like a lot of new regulations coming. So in the EU, just the last 2 months, there was 2 new regulations announced. The Eco-Design Directive, which is about products and product design, is going to require products to disclose its environmental impact and document it and make it repairable and circular. So there's a lot of stuff in there that is affecting how products are being created, how products are being designed. There's a Green Claims Directive, which is talking about regulating how you can communicate, how you can claim sustainability and climate friendliness and things like that. So you can't just say these things anymore. It's going to be more similar to the medical industry, where if you make a claim, you have to back it up with data. And in Norway, we have procurement laws, and also big companies can set their own procurement terms and say, like, we are going to weigh sustainability on a product level. And so this is affecting this job of the salespeople very actively, already. We see this, and we talk to many customers about this. And of course, the new higher level reporting and disclosure regulations that are affecting strategy on a board level and the owner level. So business will not stay as usual. And then you have examples of companies who are using this very, very actively in their communication. It's not just some sort of back office exercise, it's out there. Polestar is a perfect one. They're mapping out the carbon footprint of their car, and they're using it as a roadmap, basically saying, we need to get to zero. That means that every single decision that we do is going to factor this in. We're going to choose our materials and our factories and our suppliers and everything with this in mind. Okay, so this is all good, and kind of the high level is probably easy to understand. But what does it mean in practice? So we need to start working with what you call life cycle assessments, or LCAs, and basically mapping out the impact of a product or a service or a company in a systematic manner from cradle to gate and cradle to grave, basically the whole life cycle of the product. And this is what we do, and what Variable does. We built a software platform for that, so it's a software solution that helps companies do exactly this. And we are operationalizing it, so making it sure that it's easy to use and you can use it at scale when you have thousands of products. So the first step, which is a very, very important one, and that's where Inventas and us are partners in this journey, is to introduce this into the product design process, because there's a lot of impact that you can make in a product design process. Which materials you're choosing, how you even assemble the product, that affects a lot of things down the line that are very, very difficult to change. Like if you make a tooling in a factory for a certain material or a certain product, that changing it is basically redesigning the product. So things that you're looking in a lot of these decisions very, very early on in the design process, and therefore you can make a huge impact as a designer or a product manager, engineer early in the process to make these decisions. And of course, you need to understand it. You need tools and data to understand it in a detailed way and dig into where the hotspots are and what are the things that are important to change. Secondly, of course, once something is designed and you put it into production, and things don't end in the design processes. If any of you who run a company that produces things, then there's a lot of improvements going on. Some companies are even making things on a batch basis, and sometimes changing the material inputs on a batch level. So they need to keep track of these things. So that's another thing another very important part of operationalizing it is that when you have a production process and you have a portfolio of products, perhaps hundreds or thousands of products, how are you going to operate this? How are you going to keep track that the decisions that you made when you designed this product are still relevant, and that you're using still those materials, and also following up on the continuous improvements of reducing the impact of the product once it's in production. And it's very, very important. Value chain collaboration was mentioned here. It's very, very important, obviously, that you're acting on real data, data from the value chain. So that's a very important part of it, is to collect data from the value chain. And this deserves its own slide. But basically, the whole idea here is that the way that this whole like life cycle assessment world has been operating using average databases and very, very kind of gross assumptions, and is not going to fly anymore. And purely because you have to make claims based on your data, that means that if you're using claims based on averages, then you're not going to be able to back up your climate-friendly, carbon-neutral, low-carbon claims, because anyone can say that when you're using average data. So it's going to be increasingly important that when you say collaboration, it actually means a data exchange. So as part of the business relationship, you are exchanging data within the value chain. And this is something that obviously our customers are already doing. Instead of using surveys and high-level questionnaires and stuff, they're actually requiring data on a product level from their suppliers and from their value chain. And then importantly, it's also like, okay, what happens when we have all of this super good? We have a database and we make decisions internally, but how do we turn this into some sort of business case? And the interesting thing, as I mentioned there, of course, this is becoming a growth driver when the procurement processes are requiring this, for instance, in Norway now, that you prove like product level data on sustainability. Then, of course, this is a very obvious tool that you can use to show that you are better than your competitors, or at least you have done the work of documenting it. So first of all, you can benchmark yourself against others and see, like, is this something that you can actually use as a selling point? Salespeople love it. That's our experience, because a lot of the time there is a notion that well, this is just some extra work and it's some extra hassle and cost. Why should we do this? But the reality is that those people who work in sales know that every single thing that you can use to differentiate from your competitors is an ammunition, it's a good thing. So they actually love it and they love talking about it. So we also built what is coming now in the EU, what you call digital product passport. It's an idea of creating a digital documentation of the environmental impact and everything, kind of package all of this sustainability data and easily present it to consumers or customers. And this is changing the discussion from basically sustainability being this back office thing that someone has to do it for compliance reasons, into put it into front of the customers and changing the conversation and making it more of a sales and marketing relevant conversation. And that's a good thing. If the good ones win, then everyone's happy. We're working with Inventas and many others who are actually using the product, our platform in a design process to design new process, to create new products, and also brands who are operating their existing portfolio. This is a point that is, I think, very important to hammer. We already heard it twice today, but you're going to hear it a third time. I think that probably like most companies have design cycles that last at least a few years. So if your competitors are already doing this, you might not know because they're not going to tell you that they're working on a new product. So if your competitor started this work 1 year ago, you are 1 year behind, and you don't have a lot of time because you have really 2-3 design cycles until 2030. And that's something that we certainly also see, that a lot of the change happens when someone sees that their competitor is starting to do this. So it's both it's one of the things that you can do also as a company, is to challenge your industry and challenge your competitors, and by doing that create a competitive dynamic that's good for everyone. So yeah, welcome to check out our platform, and happy to chat about this later on today.
Let's keep you on stage for a few minutes, Adam.
Questions, right?
We are a little bit over time, but let's see if there's any questions, and let's take it in English since Adam prefers English. Any questions about the great tool that has been developed?
Questions?
If there's not one from... Yeah, we have one here. Maurice?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I heard it. You asked who should use this platform or a tool.
Yeah. And where will the impact be the biggest?
In terms of where the emission impact is in the... Yeah, okay, so I'll start with the second question. Typically materials, in most cases, when you're thinking about like products that kind of everyday products or construction materials, like consumer products, most of these things have the biggest impact in the materials. Of course, when you look at the material itself, like look at steel or aluminium, then it's more concentrated in often the processing and energy. But if you're like combining a product from different materials, then it's in the material itself. And that's one of the things that we see as a very, very interesting and important thing about using our platform or sort of this whole methodology, is that it helps you calibrate your intuition. Because very often people think, oh, well, shipping something from China, that's by far the worst thing about the product. But that's actually not the case. Very often that's a very, very small fraction, because global shipping is so efficient. And you have giant vessels carrying a lot of things. But then we're not focusing enough on the problem of what materials go into that product and how they are made. You can choose between two exactly similar commodity products, and they're made a completely different way, 10 times different in terms of their product footprint. And then all we talk about is how far we are shipping it from. So it's I would say the general intuition, I think, that you need to calibrate a bit is that focus more on the materials and focus on the supply chain. And in terms of who should use it, I mean, obviously product designers, anyone who works with products and makes decisions, but at the same time, I would also say that it's not only on the designers, because designers often work from a brief, and then someone tells them, this is what I want. So I think it's very kind of it should start in a more strategic process, like strategic product development, decision makers, board level decision makers, executives who are deciding a direction. Because sometimes a designer's hands are a bit tied in terms of what they can do. So that I would say that anyone who works early in the process are like the main kind of users. So we have a lot of product managers, sustainability managers who are early involved in product development processes, and product designers and engineers mostly.
Great.
Morten?
Yes, thank you, Adam. Quality of data has been an issue for a long time in sustainability, making decisions hard to know that you're making the right ones. To what extent would you say that that problem has been overcome, that you sort of have quality, reliable data from different types of products and industries?
Yeah, so obviously what's happening is that we're moving, what we see is that we're moving towards a kind of setup where there is more granular data. So they're moving away from this like database averages, assumptions, to more granular, more specific data. That also requires more kind of internal controls. So for the organizations themselves to have a good process internally to be able to provide and then sort of produce that data. And also controls that are like third-party controls outside of the organization. So verification typically. So I would say that don't trust anything that's not third-party verified, kind of by definition. Of course, for working like kind of like development processes, it's good to trust that. And you can work with it in most cases. I think there is quite, like especially here in the Nordics, there is quite generically a high level of trust, so people don't lie that much to each other, but in business to business at least. But when it comes to making claims publicly, it's very, very important to verify this. So there are verifiers whose job is exactly that, and we see absolutely an increase in basically that need to verify this information, both for business to business, kind of like there are these EPDs and other kind of verified documentation of this data, but also towards the consumers. And when it comes to the Green Claims Directive, that's actually one of the things that they're saying, that the claims that are, these kind of full life cycle claims, environmental claims, need to be verified. So I think that that's kind of one of the main things that we see, we'll see changing, that the role of verification is going to be more important, and also the same way as this data is becoming more relevant and becoming more like a financial data, or getting closer to financial data, as I'm sure you know, that also means that the sort of processes will become resembling a bit more the financial industry's processes, like auditors, who's going to audit it, someone's going to sign the reports and the disclosures. So I think it's going that direction. We are treating this more seriously. But of course, it's not like super good. It's a mix. It's a huge mix. One of the things that we do in our platform is we help you keep track of the data quality. So basically, because it's very, very mixed, so you need to know, okay, I have some data here, but it's just an assumption, it's an average. We need to rate it. So that's rated differently in our system than the things that are specific and verified and high quality. So yeah, there is a meta story here about data quality that you need to keep track of if you work with this.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam, and thank you for good questions and good answers. So let's move on to the next one. Give Adam an applause.